The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 2 years. Maya rolled out of bed, her body aching from yesterday's double shift. The small apartment was quiet except for the gentle breathing coming from the tiny bedroom next door where her 7-year-old daughter Lily was still fast asleep. Maya tiptoed to the kitchen and started the coffee maker with practiced silence. She had perfected this morning routine down to the minute. Every movement was calculated to avoid waking Lily, who needed every precious moment of sleep before school. The coffee machine gurgled to life, filling the cramped space with the only luxury Maya allowed herself these days. While waiting for her coffee, she glanced at the stack of bills on the counter. Electric bill, rent notice, medical bills from Lily's last doctor visit. The numbers swam before her tired eyes, each one a reminder of how far behind she was falling. She pushed them aside and focused on getting ready for another long day at Romano's Italian restaurant. The hot shower felt like heaven for exactly 3 minutes before the guilt kicked in. Every minute of hot water cost money they didn't have. Maya quickly finished washing her hair with the cheap shampoo she bought in bulk and stepped out into the cold bathroom. The mirror showed a woman who looked older than her 27 years, with dark circles under brown eyes that once sparkled with dreams. She dressed in her work uniform, black pants that were starting to fade, white shirt that she hand-washed every night to keep crisp, and comfortable shoes that had seen better days. The uniform was nothing special, but Maya wore it with dignity. She had learned long ago that how you carried yourself mattered more than what you wore. Before leaving, she peeked into Lily's room. Her daughter was curled up under a patchwork quilt, clutching a stuffed elephant that had been her companion since babyhood. Maya's heart clenched with love and worry. Lily deserved so much more than this tiny apartment, more than generic cereal for breakfast and hand-me-down clothes from neighbors. The bus ride to Romano's took 45 minutes through the city's morning chaos. Maya used this time to prepare herself mentally for the day ahead. She would smile at customers who looked through her like she was invisible. She would bite her tongue when they complained about perfectly good food. She would pretend their casual rudeness didn't hurt. Romano's sat in the heart of the business district, its red awnings and warm lighting attracting the city's wealthy elite. Maya had worked there for 18 months, ever since her previous restaurant job ended when the owner sold the building. She was grateful for the work, even if her manager Tony made it clear she was replaceable. Tony was already there when she arrived, his permanent scowl deepening when he saw her. He was the type of man who enjoyed having power over others, especially someone like Maya who couldn't afford to fight back. His comments about her being a single mother, his implications that she wasn't smart enough for anything better, cut deep because part of her feared he might be right. The restaurant's interior was elegant but not flashy. Dark wood tables, soft lighting, and in the far corner an old baby grand piano that hadn't been played in months. Maya's eyes always found that piano, even when she tried not to look. Its black surface was dusty now, the bench pushed neatly underneath. Sometimes she wondered if it was even in tune anymore. She tied her apron and started her opening duties. Salt and pepper shakers needed filling. Tables required setting. The coffee machine demanded its morning cleaning ritual. These tasks had become automatic, leaving her mind free to wander to places she tried not to go. Maya remembered the first time she had seen a piano. She was 6 years old, visiting her aunt's house for Christmas. The moment her small fingers touched the keys, something magical happened. The sounds that came out weren't music yet, but they were possibility. Her aunt noticed her fascination and convinced Maya's parents to let her take lessons. For 15 years, music had been her world. Piano lessons twice a week even when money was tight. Practice sessions that stretched for hours, her fingers dancing across keys until the melodies became part of her heartbeat. High school competitions where she won first place 3 years running. The acceptance letter from a prestigious music conservatory that made her parents cry with pride. Then life happened. Her father's heart attack came without warning, along with medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. The family's small savings disappeared overnight. Maya's dreams of studying music professionally evaporated faster than morning mist. Instead of heading to conservatory, She took a job as a hotel receptionist to help pay the bills. The first customer of the day interrupted her memories. He was a regular, a businessman who ordered the same breakfast every morning and never looked up from his phone long enough to say thank you. Maya smiled and took his order, her voice cheerful despite the sadness in her chest. This was her life now. This was what she had become. Lunch rush brought its usual chaos, demanding customers, complex orders, spilled drinks, and complaints about everything from the temperature of the soup to the color of the napkins. Maya moved through it all with practiced grace, her mind elsewhere. During brief quiet moments, she found herself humming melodies she had written years ago, her fingers unconsciously moving as if playing invisible piano keys. Tony noticed her, humming, and shot her a disapproving look. He had made it clear that employees were there to work, not daydream. Maya quickly stopped and focused on wiping down tables, but the melodies continued playing in her head. They always did. The lunch crowd thinned, giving Maya a moment to rest her aching feet. She sat at the employee table in the back, eating leftover bread rolls that would otherwise be thrown away. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily's school. Her daughter had forgotten her lunch money again. Maya closed her eyes, calculating whether she could afford to send money for lunch, or if Lily would have to make do with the free milk the school provided. She looked around the dining room at the well-dressed customers finishing their expensive meals. Some of them spent more on lunch than Maya made in a day. The inequality wasn't lost on her, but she had learned not to be bitter. Bitterness was a luxury she couldn't afford. The afternoon brought preparation for dinner service. More tables to set, wine glasses to polish, and menus to review for new additions. Romano's prided itself on attracting the city's power players. Politicians, business owners, celebrities who wanted privacy with their pasta. Maya served them all with the same professional smile, invisible to most despite standing right beside, them. As evening approached, she allowed herself one glance at the silent piano. Her fingers twitched, remembering the weight of keys, the resistance that came just before the hammer struck string. She could practically feel the music trapped inside that instrument, waiting for someone to set it free. But Maya was just a waitress now, just a single mother trying to pay rent and keep her daughter fed. The woman who once dreamed of concert halls and standing ovations seemed like a stranger from another lifetime. She straightened her shoulders and checked her reflection in the bathroom mirror before the dinner rush began. Whatever dreams she had lost, whatever music still lived in her heart, would have to wait. Right now, Lily needed her to be practical. Tonight, like every night, she would serve other people's dreams while her own stayed locked away, silent as the dusty piano in the corner. The dinner rush was in full swing when everything changed. Maya had served hundreds of wealthy customers over the months, but she knew the moment Alexander Cross walked through Romano's front door that this night would be different. The entire restaurant seemed to shift its energy around him, like metal, filings drawn to a powerful magnet. Alexander Cross was one of those people you recognized even if you had never met him personally. His face appeared on magazine covers and business news programs regularly. At 42, he had built a technology empire from nothing, turning a small software company into a global powerhouse worth billions. Tonight, he wore an expensive, dark gray suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months, but it was his presence that truly commanded attention. He moved through the restaurant like he owned it, which for all Maya knew, maybe he did. Rich people had a way of owning things without anyone else knowing about it. His assistant, a nervous-looking woman in her 30s, hurried behind him carrying tablets and folders. 3 other people followed, clearly important business associates. Based on their expensive clothes and confident postures, Tony practically tripped over himself rushing to greet them. Maya had never seen her usually gruff manager act so deferential, his voice taking on a tone she didn't recognize. Within minutes, the best table in the house had been prepared, complete with fresh flowers and the restaurant's finest silverware. The other customers seemed to sense something significant was happening, their conversations becoming quieter as they tried to get glimpses of the famous billionaire. Maya tried to focus on her other tables, but it was impossible to ignore the energy radiating from Alexander's corner of the dining room. His voice carried a natural authority that made people listen, even when he was speaking quietly. She caught fragments of conversation about mergers, stock prices, and deals worth more. money than she could imagine. The business dinner seemed important. Maya could tell by the way Alexander's guests leaned forward when he spoke, the intensity of their discussions, and the thick contracts spread across the table between the appetizer and main course. Charts and graphs were passed around like dessert menus. This wasn't just dinner, it was high-stakes business being conducted over expensive wine. But something was wrong. Maya noticed it first in Alexander's micro-expressions, the slight tightness around his eyes when one of his guests checked his phone instead of paying attention. The energy at the table felt flat somehow, lacking the excitement that should accompany a major business deal. His associates seemed distracted, unimpressed by whatever Alexander was trying to sell them. Maya had developed a sixth sense about customer moods during her months of waiting tables. She could tell when someone was having a bad day, when a couple was fighting, when a business deal was going sideways. Right now, she could sense Alexander's frustration growing, though he hid it well behind his professional smile. The restaurant's atmosphere wasn't helping. Despite Romano's elegant decor and reputation, something felt sterile about the evening. The usual background music system was broken, leaving only the sounds of clinking silverware and muted conversations. The lighting, while expensive, felt cold rather than warm. Even the food, while perfectly prepared, seemed to lack the magic that makes a dining experience memorable. Alexander's eyes began scanning the room as if searching for something to change the dynamic of his failing dinner. Maya watched him assess every detail: the artwork on the walls, the placement of tables, the flow of service. His gaze lingered on the old piano in the corner, its black surface reflecting the soft restaurant lighting. Then his attention shifted to Maya herself. She felt his eyes on her as she moved between tables, carrying trays and taking orders. Unlike most customers who looked through her as if she were invisible, Alexander seemed to actually see her. His stare was intense but not uncomfortable, more like he was solving a puzzle in his head. Maya tried to ignore the attention and focus on her work, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander was studying her for some reason. During her break, she overheard one of the other servers talking about how he had asked questions about the staff. Not inappropriate questions, just basic information about who worked there and how long they had been employed. The conversation at Alexander's table grew more strained as the evening progressed. Maya caught glimpses of frustrated gestures and forced smiles. Whatever deal he was trying to close clearly wasn't going according to plan. His guests seemed bored, more interested in checking their phones than discussing business. The atmosphere at their table felt heavy with disappointment. Then something shifted in Alexander's expression. Maya was refilling water glasses at a nearby table when she saw it, a look of determination that suggested he had made some kind of decision. He excused himself from his table and walked directly toward the old piano, running his fingers along its dusty surface. When he returned to his seat, Maya noticed him watching her again, but this time with obvious intent. Her heart started beating faster without her understanding why. She tried to stay busy with her other customers, but she could feel his eyes tracking her movements around the dining room. The moment came suddenly. Maya was delivering dessert menus to a table near the kitchen when Alexander's voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a knife through butter. "Excuse me, miss." The entire dining room seemed to pause. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the kitchen staff peeked out to see what was happening. Maya turned slowly, knowing somehow that he was addressing her, though she hoped she was. "Wrong." "Yes, sir?" she managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Alexander stood up from his table, his full attention focused on her. His business associates looked confused, clearly wondering why their important dinner was being interrupted. But Alexander's expression was determined, like a man who had decided to take a calculated risk. "I understand you play piano," he said, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly quiet restaurant. Maya's blood turned to ice water. How could he possibly know that? She hadn't played publicly in years, hadn't even mentioned her musical background to anyone at Romano's except Tony, and that was only because he had asked about her work history during the hiring process. I used to," she stammered, acutely aware that every person in the restaurant was now staring at them. "But sir, I'm working right now and Alexander raised his hand, stopping her mid-sentence. My business associates and I are conducting important negotiations tonight. The atmosphere here is—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Lacking something essential. I believe live music would enhance the ambiance significantly." Maya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment and anger. This wasn't a request. It was a command disguised as polite conversation. She glanced around the restaurant, seeing curiosity and pity in the faces watching this public drama unfold. "Sir, I appreciate the suggestion, but playing piano isn't part of my job here. I'm a server and I have tables to take care of." Alexander smiled, but there was steel behind it. "Everything is negotiable, miss. I'm sure your manager would agree that customer satisfaction is the priority here." As if summoned by magic, Tony appeared at Maya's elbow, his face flushed with nervous excitement at having such a famous customer make a personal request. Maya could practically see the dollar signs in his eyes as he calculated how much business this could bring to Romano's. "Of course, Mr. Cross," Tony said quickly. "Maya would be happy to play for you, wouldn't you, Maya?" The trap was closing around her, and Maya could feel it. Refusing now would mean disappointing Tony, potentially losing her job and publicly embarrassing herself in front of a restaurant full of wealthy customers. But agreeing meant putting herself on display, performing like a trained animal for the entertainment of people who saw her as nothing more than hired help. Alexander reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. Maya watched in horrified fascination as he counted out 5 $100 bills, placing them carefully on her serving tray. "Consider it a performance fee," he said quietly, but loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "I'm sure you could use the extra money." The comment hit Maya like a physical blow, not because it was wrong, she desperately needed the money, but because it was so casually cruel. Here was a man worth billions, reducing her to a street performer who would dance for spare change. The worst part was that he was right. $500 would pay for Lily's school supplies, the overdue electric bill, and groceries for 2 weeks. Maya looked down at the money on her tray, then back up at Alexander's expectant face. Behind him, his business associates waited to see how this little drama would play out. Around the restaurant, other customers had stopped eating to watch the show. She thought about Lily sleeping peacefully at home, trusting that her mother would find a way to pay for everything they needed. She thought about the stack of bills on their kitchen counter, each one a reminder of how precarious their situation had become. "I haven't played in a very long time," Maya said quietly, hating how small her voice sounded. Alexander's smile widened, sensing victory. "I have confidence in your abilities." Maya felt something die inside her chest as she realized she had no choice. The money was too much to refuse, the pressure too public to resist. She looked one more time around the restaurant, seeing expectation and curiosity on every face. "All right," she whispered, the words tasting like ashes in her mouth. "I'll play, for you." The trap had snapped shut and Maya was caught inside it. She picked up the money with trembling fingers, knowing that in accepting it, she was agreeing to perform her own humiliation for the entertainment of people who would never understand what it cost her. Alexander returned to his table with obvious satisfaction, already turning his attention back to his business associates as if Maya were a problem he had successfully solved. But Maya stood frozen in the middle of the dining room, clutching $500 and feeling like she had just sold something precious that she could never get back. Maya's legs felt like they were made of water as she walked toward the piano. Every step seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet restaurant, even though the carpet should have muffled the sound of her worn work shoes. The distance between her and the old instrument felt both impossibly long and terrifyingly short at the same time. She could feel every pair of eyes in the restaurant following her movement. Some customers had actually turned their chairs to get a better view of whatever was about to happen. The weight of their attention pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket, making it hard to breathe normally. This wasn't how she had imagined returning to music after all these years. The piano bench was exactly where she remembered it, pushed neatly under the keyboard. Maya pulled it out slowly, the legs scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed amplified in the hushed restaurant. She sat down carefully, adjusting the height the way she had been taught years ago. Her music teacher's voice echoed in her memory. Posture first, Maya. The music flows from your entire body, not just your fingers. The keys looked different than she remembered. Older, more yellowed, with tiny scratches and wear marks that spoke of decades of use. Someone had obviously taken care of this instrument once upon a time, but it had been neglected recently. Maya wondered how long it had been since anyone had played it. Really played it, not just plunked out simple melodies for background noise. She lifted the keyboard cover and the familiar smell hit her immediately. That mixture of wood polish, old, ivory, and something indefinable that every piano seemed to possess. It was like stepping into a time machine that transported her back to childhood lessons, high school recitals, and late-night practice sessions when the world was full of possibilities. Maya's hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. She could feel Alexander watching her from his corner table, probably wondering if his gamble was about to pay off. His business associates had stopped their conversation entirely, clearly more interested in this unexpected entertainment than whatever deal they had been discussing. She pressed middle C gently, testing the instrument's response. The note rang clear and true, surprising her. Despite its dusty appearance, someone had kept this piano in decent tune. The sound brought tears to her eyes that she quickly blinked away. She couldn't afford to fall apart now, not in front of all these strangers. Maya started with something simple and safe, a Bach prelude she had learned as a teenager. It was a piece designed to blend into the background, pleasant, but not attention-grabbing. Her fingers moved slowly at first, reacquainting themselves with the feel of real keys after months of playing air piano at home. The muscle memory was still there, buried under layers of worry and exhaustion, but alive nonetheless. Her fingers began to find their rhythm, moving with increasing confidence across the familiar patterns. The notes flowed together smoothly, creating the gentle, sophisticated atmosphere that Alexander had demanded for his business dinner. But something unexpected was happening. As Maya continued playing, she felt herself relaxing for the first time in months. The constant knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. The endless mental list of bills and responsibilities faded into the background. For these few minutes, she wasn't Maya, the struggling single mother, or Maya, the overworked waitress. She was just a musician, creating something beautiful in the world. Her playing grew stronger, more confident. The simple Bach prelude evolved into something richer, more nuanced. Maya found herself adding subtle variations, small personal touches that made the familiar piece uniquely hers. She had forgotten how good it felt to make music, how the act of playing seemed to complete some essential part of herself that had been missing. The restaurant's acoustics were surprisingly good. The notes seemed to fill every corner of the dining room without overwhelming conversation. Maya could hear chairs shifting as people adjusted their positions to listen more comfortably. The usual sounds of clinking silverware and quiet chatter had diminished significantly. Alexander's table had gone completely silent. Maya caught a glimpse of them from the corner of her eye and was surprised to see that his previously distracted business associates were now paying full attention. Not to their contracts and charts, but to her performance. One of them, an older woman in an elegant suit, was actually smiling for the first time all evening. Encouraged by this response, Maya transitioned into a gentle Mozart sonata. This was more challenging territory, requiring greater technical skill and emotional range. Her fingers danced across the keys with increasing fluidity, muscle memory overriding months of disuse. The beautiful melodies seemed to unlock something deep inside her that had been locked away for too long. Other diners had begun to take notice as well. Conversations were continuing, but at lower volumes. Several people had paused their meals to listen more carefully. Maya could sense the shift in the room's energy. What had started as background music was becoming something more significant. But with this growing attention came a familiar anxiety. Maya had always struggled with performance pressure, even during her conservatory days. The knowledge that people were really listening, really judging, made her fingers feel clumsy and uncertain. She stumbled over a passage she had played flawlessly thousands of times before. The mistake was small, probably unnoticeable to most of the audience, but it shattered Maya's growing confidence. Suddenly, she was hyper-aware of every sound she was making, every slight imperfection in her technique. Her shoulders tensed up, and she could feel sweat beginning to form on her palms despite the restaurant's comfortable temperature. She tried to focus on the music itself, rather than the people listening to it, but it was impossible to forget where she was and why she was playing. This wasn't a recital or a concert where people had come specifically to hear music. This was a performance for tips, a novelty act to enhance someone else's business dinner. Maya glanced toward Alexander's table and saw him checking his phone while she played. The casual dismissal stung more than she expected. Here she was, pouring her heart into music that had once meant everything to her, and he was treating it like background noise while he handled more important matters. His business associates, however, seemed genuinely engaged. The older woman was leaning back in her chair with her eyes closed, a peaceful expression on her face. One of the men had stopped eating entirely and was watching Maya's fingers move across the keys with obvious fascination. Even their server had paused nearby, listening with the same rapt attention. As Maya continued playing, she began to notice other reactions around the restaurant. A young couple at a corner table had stopped talking and were holding hands, lost in the romantic atmosphere the music was creating. An elderly gentleman dining alone had tears in his eyes, perhaps remembering someone or something the melodies had brought back to him. Despite her own discomfort with the situation, Maya realized that her music was touching people in ways she hadn't expected. This wasn't just background noise or dinner entertainment. It was creating moments of genuine connection and emotion for complete strangers. The realization brought with it a complex mix of pride and sadness. She was proud that she could still move people with her playing, still create something beautiful and meaningful. But she was heartbroken that it was happening under these circumstances, as a reluctant performance for money rather than as an expression of artistic passion. Maya finished the Mozart piece and paused, unsure what to play next. The brief silence felt heavy with expectation. She could sense that the restaurant didn't want the music to stop, that somehow her playing had become essential to the evening's atmosphere, but she also felt exposed and vulnerable, like she was sharing parts of herself that she had kept carefully hidden. Every note revealed something about her inner life, her dreams, her losses. Playing in public was like being naked in front of strangers, and Maya wasn't sure she was strong enough to continue much longer. She looked down at her hands resting on the keys and made a decision. If she was going to do this, if she was going to sacrifice her dignity for Alexander's business dinner and the money she desperately needed, then at least she would play something that mattered to her, something that would make this humiliation feel like less of a betrayal of everything music had once meant in her life. Maya took a deep breath and began to play again, this time choosing a piece that had always been special to her, a Chopin nocturne that spoke of longing and hope and dreams that refused to die even in the darkest times. As the first notes filled the restaurant, she felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been sleeping for too long beginning to wake up. Maya was halfway through the Chopin nocturne when Alexander's voice cut through the delicate melody like a blade through silk. She stopped playing abruptly, her hands freezing over the keys as every head in the restaurant turned toward his table. "That's lovely background music," he said, his tone carrying the casual authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "But I think we need something with more presence, something that shows these people what real talent looks like." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Real talent. As if what she had been playing was somehow fake or insufficient. She felt her cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. Here she was, already performing against her will. And now he wanted to dictate not just that she play, but how she should play. Maya looked around the restaurant and saw the faces of the other diners watching this public exchange with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Some looked embarrassed for her while others seemed to be enjoying the drama. She felt like an animal in a zoo, performing tricks for the entertainment of visitors who would forget about her the moment they walked away. "I'm not sure what you're looking for," Maya said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her chest. Alexander leaned back in his chair with the confidence of a man who had never been told no about anything that mattered to him. Something challenging. Something that demonstrates the kind of skill that separates true artists from people who just play pretty songs. His business associates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The older woman who had been enjoying Maya's performance looked distinctly unhappy with Alexander's demanding tone. But Maya could see that this wasn't really about music for him. This was about power, about proving that he could make people dance to his tune, literally and figuratively. Maya's hands were trembling now, not with nervousness, but with suppressed rage. She thought about Lily sleeping peacefully at home, trusting that her mother would find a way to make their lives work. She thought about the stack of bills on their kitchen counter, each one representing another month of barely scraping by. She thought about all the dreams she had given up, all the sacrifices she had made, and how this man saw her struggle as nothing more than entertainment. But as she sat there at the piano bench, feeling smaller and more powerless than she had in years, something unexpected happened. Deep inside her chest, in a place she had kept carefully locked away since her father's death, Maya felt something stirring. It wasn't defeat or resignation. It was defiance. If Alexander wanted to see real talent, if he wanted something challenging, that would show everyone in this restaurant what she was truly capable of, then that's exactly what he was going to get. But it wouldn't be the performance he was expecting. Maya straightened her shoulders and placed her hands back on the keys. But instead of launching into another classical piece designed to impress wealthy dinner guests, she closed her eyes and let her mind drift back to a night 3 years ago. The night her father died. She had been sitting beside his hospital bed in the intensive care unit, holding his hand as machines beeped and hummed around them. The doctors had said there was nothing more they could do. It was just a matter of time. Maya had sat there through the long night, watching her father sleep, thinking about everything that had brought them to that moment. That's when the melody had first come to her, not as notes on a page or sounds from an instrument, but as a feeling, a story that needed to be told. She had hummed it softly in that sterile hospital room, and somehow it had helped both of them get through those final hours together. After the funeral, when Maya was cleaning out her father's things, she had found an old notebook where she used to write down musical ideas. Late one night when Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, she had sat at their tiny electric keyboard and played that melody for the first time. Then she had built around it, adding harmonies and variations, creating a complete piece that captured everything she had felt during those difficult months. She had never played it for anyone else. It was too personal, too raw, too much a part of her own heart to share with the world. But now, sitting in this elegant restaurant while wealthy strangers watched her perform for their amusement, Maya decided that if she was going to expose herself, she might as well do it completely. The first notes of her original composition filled the restaurant like nothing that had come before. This wasn't background music or dinner entertainment. This was pure emotion translated into sound, a story told without words about loss and love and the terrible beauty of being human. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with a confidence and passion that had been missing from her earlier performances. This was her music, born from her experience, shaped by her pain and hope and determination. Every note carried the weight of her father's last smile, Lily's innocent trust, and her own stubborn refusal to give up even when everything seemed impossible. The melody started soft and haunting like a memory half remembered. It spoke of quiet moments in hospital corridors, of holding hands in the dark, of love that persists even when everything else falls apart. Maya's left hand provided a gentle, steady bass line that felt like a heartbeat, while her right hand wove the melody with delicate precision. As the piece developed, the music grew more complex and emotionally intense. Maya added layers of harmony that created rich, full chords capable of expressing feelings that words could never capture. The melody soared and dipped, sometimes breaking into fragments before reassembling itself into something even more beautiful. CB, transformation in the restaurant was immediate and profound. Conversations didn't just quiet down, they stopped completely. Servers paused in the middle of their tasks, forgetting about the orders they were supposed to deliver. Even the kitchen staff emerged from behind their swinging doors, drawn by the powerful emotion pouring from the old piano. Maya was completely lost in the music now, no longer aware of her audience or her surroundings. She was back in that hospital room, back in her father's apartment packing away his belongings, back in her own kitchen late at night trying to figure out how to build a life for herself and Lily from the broken pieces of her old dreams. The music told all of these stories simultaneously. It spoke of grief without wallowing in sadness, of struggle without surrendering to despair. Most importantly, it carried within its melodies a message of hope. Not the cheap, easy hope that pretends everything will be fine, but the hard-earned hope that comes from discovering you're stronger than you thought possible. At Alexander's table, the change was dramatic. His phone lay forgotten on the white tablecloth. His business associates had pushed their contracts aside, their attention completely captured by the raw honesty of Maya's performance. The older woman had tears streaming down her cheeks, while one of the men sat with his mouth slightly open as if he had forgotten how to breathe. But it was Alexander himself who showed the most profound reaction. The confident, controlling demeanor had melted away completely. He sat transfixed. His usual mask of professional composure cracked wide open. Maya's music had found something deep inside him that he had buried long ago. Memories of his own struggles, his own losses, his own moments of doubt when success seemed impossible. Around the restaurant, similar transformations were taking place. The young couple at the corner table were holding hands tightly, both of them crying freely. The elderly gentleman who had been dining alone was no longer trying to hide his tears. Even Tony, Maya's usually harsh manager, stood frozen by the kitchen entrance with an expression of wonder on his face. Maya's composition was reaching its climax now, the melody climbing higher and becoming more intense with each passing measure. Her entire body was engaged in the performance, swaying slightly with the rhythm, her face reflecting every emotion the music contained. She was no longer just playing the piano. She was channeling her entire life experience through the instrument. The piece spoke of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. It carried the voices of everyone who had ever worked 2 jobs to pay rent, who had ever chosen their children's needs over their own dreams, who had ever refused to give up even when giving up seemed like the only rational choice. Maya's music had become an anthem for every person who had ever felt invisible, overlooked, or undervalued. As the final section began, Maya opened her eyes for the first time since she had started playing her original piece. What she saw took her breath away. Every single person in Romano's was focused entirely on her, their faces reflecting the same raw emotion that had poured from her fingers onto the keys. These weren't just wealthy customers enjoying dinner entertainment anymore. They had become a community united by shared human experience, connected by the universal language of music that spoke directly to the heart. Maya realized that in trying to humiliate her, Alexander had accidentally created something magical, a moment of authentic connection in a world that too often felt cold and disconnected. The final notes of her composition rang through the restaurant with crystal clarity, each one carrying the full weight of everything Maya had experienced and overcome. As the last sound faded into silence, she sat motionless at the piano bench, emotionally drained but somehow more complete than she had felt in years. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, pregnant with emotion and understanding. For several long seconds, no one moved or spoke. Maya had given them something precious and rare, something that couldn't be bought or commanded or demanded. She had shared her truth, and in doing so, she had reminded everyone present of their own capacity for hope, resilience, and grace. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Maya sat perfectly still at the piano bench, her hands resting motionless on the keys, afraid to move or breathe too loudly. She had poured everything into that performance, every ounce of pain, hope, and resilience she possessed. Now she felt empty in the best possible way, like a vessel that had finally fulfilled its purpose. Then, somewhere in the back of the restaurant, someone began to clap. It was slow at first, deliberate, the kind of applause reserved for something truly special. Within seconds, others joined in, The sound built gradually, spreading through Romano's like ripples across still water. But this wasn't the polite, obligatory clapping Maya had heard at fancy dinner parties or business events. This was something deeper, more genuine. People began standing up from their tables. The elderly gentleman who had been dining alone rose. First, his applause strong and steady despite the tears still visible on his cheeks. The young couple followed, then the business professionals at nearby tables. Even the kitchen staff still clustered near the service entrance clapped with enthusiasm that seemed to surprise them. Maya turned on the piano bench to face the restaurant, overwhelmed by the response. She had never experienced anything like this, not even during her most successful recitals years ago. These people weren't applauding her technical skill or musical training. They were responding to something much more fundamental, the raw honesty of human experience shared through melody. The applause continued for nearly a full minute, punctuated by someone shouting, "Bravo!" from across the room. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes, but these weren't tears of humiliation or despair. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, truly valued for who she was rather than what she could provide for others. As the clapping finally began to subside, Maya noticed movement at Alexander's table. He was standing up, but unlike the others, he wasn't applauding. Instead, he seemed frozen in place, staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. His business associates remained seated, looking between him and Maya with obvious confusion. Alexander began walking toward the piano, moving slowly, as if he were in a trance. The restaurant gradually fell quiet again, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Maya watched him approach, her heart beating fast. She had no idea what to expect from the man who had forced her into this situation in the first place. When Alexander reached the piano, he surprised everyone by sitting down on the bench beside Maya. Up close, she could see that his usual confident mask had completely fallen away. His eyes were red-rimmed, and there were tracks on his cheeks where tears had fallen. This wasn't the composed billionaire who had commanded her to perform earlier. That wasn't just music, Alexander said quietly, his voice barely audible to anyone except Maya. That was truth, that was... He paused, struggling to find words. That was everything I used to believe in before I forgot what really mattered. Maya studied his face, seeing vulnerability she never would have expected from someone so powerful and successful. What do you mean? Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring down at the piano keys. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of regret that surprised Maya with its depth. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with my mother and grandmother. We had nothing. No money, no connections, no advantages except the belief that hard work could change everything. My grandmother cleaned office buildings at night to help pay for my school clothes. My mother worked 2 jobs and still found time to help me with homework. Maya listened without interrupting, sensing that Alexander needed to tell this story as much as she had needed to play her composition. I was good with computers, even as a kid. Taught myself programming from library, books because we couldn't afford classes. I promised myself that someday I'd make enough money so my family would never have to struggle again. That promise drove everything I did. Alexander's hands moved slightly, his fingers tracing patterns on the piano keys without pressing them down. But somewhere along the way, making money stopped being about helping my family and started being about proving I was better than everyone who had ever looked down on us. I forgot that the point wasn't just to escape poverty. It was to remember what it felt like so I could help others do the same. Maya felt a shift in her understanding of the man sitting beside her. What happened to your family? My grandmother died 5 years ago. Lung cancer from all those years of cleaning with harsh chemicals. My mother, she's comfortable now, lives in a beautiful house I bought her. But she tells me all the time that success changed me, made me hard. She says she misses the boy who used to call her every day just to hear about her morning. Alexander finally looked directly at Maya, and she saw genuine pain in his eyes. Your music tonight reminded me of that boy. It reminded me of what it feels like to struggle, to hope, to keep going when everything seems impossible. I haven't felt that in years. Around them, the restaurant had resumed normal operation. but at a much quieter level than before. Servers moved carefully. Customers spoke in hushed tones as if everyone understood that something important was happening at the piano and didn't want to disturb it. "Why did you make me play?" Maya asked. "If you understood struggle, why did you put me through that humiliation?" Alexander's face flushed with shame. "Because I've become the kind of person I used to hate. Someone who sees other people as tools to get what I want. That business deal tonight was worth $300 million, and when I saw it failing, I panicked. I thought entertainment would save it." He gestured toward his table where his business associates were still waiting, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "But watching you play, hearing your story told through music, I realized I don't want that deal if it means staying the person I've become. Some things are more important than money." Maya followed his gaze and saw the older woman at his table checking her watch impatiently. "Won't they be upset if you walk away?" "Probably, but they'll find another tech company to partner with. There's always another deal, another opportunity to make more money. What there isn't always another chance to remember who you used to be before success made you forget." Alexander stood up from the piano bench and walked back to his table. Maya watched as he spoke quietly to his business associates, gathering up the contracts and papers that had seemed so important an hour earlier. The conversation was brief but clearly final. Within minutes, his guests were putting on their coats and heading for the exit, their faces showing various degrees of confusion and irritation. Alexander returned to Maya, who was still sitting at the piano. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I did tonight was wrong. I treated you like a performer instead of a person, and I'm sorry." "Apology accepted," Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure she meant it yet. Actions would matter more than words. "There's something else," Alexander continued. "I want to make this right, but not in a way that feels like charity or pity. Would you be willing to record that composition you played tonight? Not for my business associates or restaurant customers, but for everyone who needs to hear that kind of hope." Maya felt her heart skip. "Record it? Like, professionally? I know people in the music industry. Good people who understand the difference between art and entertainment. Your song deserves to be heard by more than just the customers at Romano's." For the first time since her father died, Maya felt a spark of her old dreams coming back to life. But she was also cautious. Life had taught her to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true. "What would you get out of it?" she asked. Alexander smiled, and for the first time all evening it looked genuine rather than calculated. The chance to help someone achieve their dreams instead of just making money off their struggles. The opportunity to be the kind of person my grandmother would be proud of. Maya thought about Lily sleeping at home, about the bills on their kitchen counter, about all the dreams she had put aside to survive. Then she thought about the feeling of playing her own music, of sharing her truth with a room full of strangers and watching it touch their hearts. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "I keep my job here until the music thing works out. I don't want to risk my daughter's security for a dream that might not happen." "Absolutely. And if this does work, if people actually want to hear my music, I want to use some of the money to help other people in situations like mine. Single parents. People who had to give up their dreams to survive." Alexander extended his hand to Maya. "It's a deal. Partners?" Maya looked at his outstretched hand, then at the piano that had just helped her reclaim a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. 6 months ago, if someone had told her that her life would change because a billionaire forced her to play piano in a restaurant, she would have laughed. But sometimes the most unexpected moments become the most important ones. Sometimes what looks like humiliation turns into opportunity. And sometimes, just sometimes, the dreams you think are dead are just waiting for the right moment to come back to life. Maya shook Alexander's hand, feeling something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine hope for the future, not the desperate hope of someone praying for a miracle, but the confident hope of someone who had just remembered what she was truly capable of achieving. As they sat together at the old piano, planning her future while Romano's buzzed quietly around them, Maya thought about what she would tell Lily in the morning. Her daughter had always believed that dreams don't really die. They just sleep until it's time to wake them up. Tonight, Maya had learned that sometimes 8-year-olds are the wisest people in the room.